The connection between this week's topic on rape, last week's topic on female genital mutilation, and future topics on forced prostitution and sex trafficking is the concept of sexual violence. Sexual violence is defined broadly by the World Health Organization in the World Report on Violence and Health as any sexual act, attempt to obtain a sexual act, unwanted sexual comments or advances, or acts to traffic or otherwise directed against a person's sexuality using coercion by any person, regardless of the relationship to the victim, in any setting. Sexual violence is found from the battlefields to the home, from relationships between strangers to the most intimate partnerships. Central to sexual violence is the use of force or coercion. Examples of sexual violence extend beyond female genital mutilation, rape and forced prostitution and sex trafficking, topics of interest in this course, to unwanted sexual advances or sexual harassment, sexual abuse of children or mentally or physically disabled people, forced marriage or cohabitation, denial of right to use contraception or to adopt other measures to protect against sexually transmitted diseases, and forced abortion. The absence of consent, be it because of gender, age, or disability, or of race, ethnicity, and class, sexual orientation, or country of origin, and the exercise of force, makes sexual violence an important concept in the linkage between politics, gender, and sexuality. Sexual violence has particular applicability to understanding rape because it is a turn of phrase of commonly held views historically of rape as violent sex. Let's be clear. Violent sex is arguably sex, and it speaks to differing sexualities, exemplified in practices of Bdsm, bondage, disciplines, sadism, masochism, when consenting adults indulge in what those in the mainstream would see as kinky or fringe sex. Fantasies around dominance and submission can be highly erotic, and despite the compelling arguments of radical feminists that these fantasies are products of patriarchal societies where women are socialized into eroticizing submission and learn to find satisfaction in being dominated, thus highlighting once again the sex-positive or sex-radical feminist pro-BDSM versus radical feminist anti-BDSM debate. Studies of sexuality today highlight that there are both women and men who want to dominate and be dominated, and gender roles are far from being clear. However, rape is not violent sex. Rape is sexual violence. It is not about passion, but about power. It is coercive, non-consensual, and gendered. As scholars point out, the main predictor of being a rape victim is gender, that is, being a woman. Yet, despite legal changes domestically, particularly in Western societies like Canada and the United States, and globally, as evident in the recognition of rape as an international crime, codifying that acts of rape are acts of violence, understandings of rape remain contested in the popular imagination. In large part, this is because of the continuing saliency of rape myths. From arguments of men's uncontrollable sexual urges, to women provoking the rape, to false reporting of rapes by women who changed their minds, to more recently the prevalence of female perpetrators and male victims, understandings of rape end up boiling down to sex. There's no better example than the debates that arise amongst readers when a newspaper reports that a young, hot female teacher has sex with an underage male student, despite what appears to be a double standard. Some will vehemently deny that the situation is comparable to a male teacher having sex with an underage female student. He is taking advantage of her, exploiting his position of power to force her to have sex, while the female teacher-male student scenario, as the argument goes, simply can't be seen as coercion. What teenage boy wouldn't want to have sex with an older woman who can offer him the kind of sexual experience and sexual knowledge that he can only fantasize about? Moreover, rape is being redefined in the context of debates over abortion. In the 2012 U.S. election season, Congressman Todd Akin, who was running for the U.S. Senate seat for Missouri, infamously stated that women do not get pregnant from rape, do not get pregnant for what he called legitimate rape, because, as he stated, The female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down. This was compounded by remarks made by Richard Murdoch, another Republican running for a U.S. Senate seat, in this case for Indiana, who stated that a pregnancy resulting from rape is something that God intended to happen. These statements bring understandings of rape back to conceptions of sex and reproduction, not about violence and power. I've asked you to read one section of Chapter 5 of the Nussbaum text entitled Sexual Violence and Preference Deformation, as well as a journal article by Shannon Sanford on sexual assault or rape myths in English-Canadian newspapers. In addition, I've asked you to read a newspaper article by Jacqueline Murray on the assumptions underpinning Todd Aiken's view of legitimate rape. I have 3 primary goals in this module. First, I want you to reflect on the continuing saliency of rape myths. Despite the legal victories brought by the feminist movement in the West to change rape laws, why do these myths remain prominent in popular thinking? Second, I want you to assess whether the redefinition of rape by anti-abortion advocates, as evident during the 2012 U.S. elections, undermines not only the reproductive rights of women, but also the coercive, violent aspect of rape. What does it mean to control women's sexual behavior in a way that not only calls into question their reproductive rights, but also their right to be free from harm and violence? Third, I want to introduce you to global understandings of rape as an international crime. Is the international recognition of rape as violence directed specifically against women an example of universal understandings of the violation of women's rights? Or is the criminalization of rape in international law, just as in domestic law, only part of the story because rape remains a prominent site of the culture wars, even in Western societies like the United States? The topic of sexual violence and rape is an important one in this course, and I look forward to your thoughtful comments this week.